Hi, welcome to Red Right to Left. I'm my ruler of time, and I've been reading manga now for a little more than 6 years, but I've been playing video games ever since I was 3. Yes, I can clearly remember when I was but a lad, and almost every night my dad and I would break out the Sega Genesis and play Golden Axe. As time went on, the games changed, the systems changed, and the amount of time I spent gaming changed, but to some extent video games were always there. From Sonic, Smash Bros. And Pokemon, to Unreal Tournament, Halo, and Ninja Gaiden, to Sonic, Smash Bros. And Pokemon. Man, how things have changed. Anyway, over the years I've found a number of manga that are based on famous video game franchises. Now, much like how movie tie-in games tend to have a lot of problems mainly stemming from a lack of development time or budget, manga based on video games don't tend to be all that special, or long-lasting. Usually you can count on them being under 20 chapters long, probably enough to fill 2 volumes at most. And besides that, these manga typically rely on the popularity of the games they're tied to, rather than trying to draw an audience with the talent of the authors and artists alone. This is the main problem I think that all non-original manga have, and why I don't tend to look at them. Take for example the short Gurren Lagann series, which put all the characters in a high school setting. Sure, there were some entertaining moments to be found in it, but it wouldn't have been able to stand up on its own without the characters and their relationships having already been established in the main series. But today I'm going to relax that standard so that I can dig into some manga that owe their existence to that evil empire that won't stop until they have every last penny of your money, Nintendo. After all, what better video game company to have manga tie-ins than one that's been in Japan for over 100 years? Well, I mean, technically it hasn't been a video game company since that long ago, but it has been around since the 19th century, so technically it has been around for over, and it converted to a video game franchise about 40, you don't care. Let's just get into it. Among all the video game franchises out there, the one you'd think would most easily make the transition between media would have to be Fire Emblem. Every game has a huge cast of characters and takes the time to establish the relationships between those characters through the support system and conversations in between levels. Add in the fact that the stories tend to be very detailed and, well, what else do you need to make it a manga series? Everything's pretty much been laid out for mangaka to use. All you have to do is take the characters, which have already been pre-designed, and put them in action poses while you work your way through the plot, which has already been pre-written. In fact, you could argue that even bothering to adapt one of the games into a manga will be a complete waste of time. In fact, that's exactly what I'm saying. There are several Fire Emblem manga out there, but the only one I've read at all is Fire Emblem and Kokuryu to Hikari no Ken, which is basically an adaptation of the first Fire Emblem game for the Famicom, and Kokuryu to Hikari no Tsurugi. How the hell did I manage to pronounce all that? The best way I could describe it is that they took the game, condensed the storyline to only the most critical plot points, and replaced all the turn-based strategy missions with brief action sequences. Also, somehow Marth looks even more effeminate than usual. I couldn't really get into this one. I kept on thinking there was no point to it existing, like 90% of film novelizations, or 3-button mice. I mean, look at this stupid thing. What's the point of the middle button? If it's not a scroll wheel, then the middle button is completely worthless. If you need to middle click, you just left click and right click simultaneously like that. What's so hard about that? Why is there this middle button? What was I talking about? Now here's a game franchise that seems like a weird choice to adapt to manga. Link is one of the most well-known silent protagonists of all time. Other than gasps, grunts, and battle cries, he never talks in the games. Fuck the CDI games. If any of you try to link me a YouTube poop and rebuttal, I'll slaughter you all. There have actually been a number of Legend of Zelda manga, probably one for each major game release, though I'm not sure. Most of them have been penned by Himekawa Akira, a writer-artist duo consisting of 2 women who haven't released their real names to the public. Himekawa has created 7 different Legend of Zelda manga, the earliest being an adaptation of Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64. The most bizarre aspect of it has to be the fact that Link actually speaks in the manga. In fact, he has a lot to say. And actually, I think that helps make it pretty good. In Ocarina of Time, Link is silent to help him serve as more of a player avatar rather than his own character. Having him speak adds a whole new dimension to his character, and besides that, it makes a lot of conversations more dynamic. After all, you encounter a character in the game and they'll go on a long expository monologue. Let Link talk back and it becomes an actual back and forth conversation. Overall in the manga, Link seems a lot less stoic than in the games, and he's a far more complete character. Not to mention the artwork is good and the action is nice too. It goes by very quickly though, since it has to cover so many events from the game in such a very short span of time. Still, I encourage you to try to find the Himekawa Zelda manga, especially if you've played one of the 7 different games they're based on. I assure you they're worth checking out. Samus Aran is another famous silent Nintendo protagonist, but unlike Link, she hasn't run into nearly as many people willing to actually talk to her in game, so it's a lot easier to get used to her speaking. What? Unlike the other manga I've discussed so far, the Metroid manga is not a straight adaptation of any of the games, but rather a look into Samus' past, from early childhood all the way up to her becoming the familiar armored bounty hunter we all know and love. Already you gotta think this is gonna be interesting. I mean, how many chances do you get to take a look into Samus' backstory? I'm sorry, I have to go on this tangent, don't I? It's just kind of obligatory at this point. I'll try and get out of the way as quickly as possible, and then we can move on, okay? First of all, I've never played Metroid Other M. I've heard enough negative things about it from every person I've talked to who has played it that I'm sure I'll never bother with it. I know the story's crap because even though I've never played it, there's 2 hours of cutscenes to watch and I had the same 2 reactions to each and every single one of them. 1, holy crap, that's pretty. 2, holy crap, why won't Samus shut up and let me appreciate how pretty it is? Samus talks too much, her voice actor sucks, they should have kept Jennifer Hale from the Prime games, and even if they did, her lines would still be awful and grating and she would still come across as far too weak. Everything I could say to criticize this game has already been said, and while I don't share the same vitriol for it that others have, I still think the story's crap. Mind you, not everyone who's played it thinks it was bad, just the people who do so think it was really bad.
Blah blah lady blah 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 the baby.
Fuck! I don't know why the story turned out so bad, but if I had to guess based on the information available to me, through Wikipedia, I would say it's because Sakamoto Yoshio has too much power in Nintendo because his word on Metroid and on Samus' character is treated as the gospel, despite the fact that until he started working on Other M, he had never thought of what kind of character she was. I get what he was trying to do, explore Samus' humanity while she's in a very weak emotional and mental state because the baby Metroid died and she was left traumatized. If he had chosen to do this at any other point in the series, Samus could have looked like the badass she'd always been before, provided that the writing wasn't as crappy as it was in this game. And for the love of God, please, if anybody at Nintendo with any kind of influence can hear me right now, I beg you, don't put Ann Malkovich in the games ever again, okay? Okay. Now let's move on to the manga. Fuck! Ignoring that, it's actually impressive just how much happens in this manga and how much we get to see of Samus' past. We first see her when she's just a little kid, the most adorable future bounty hunter ever. No, she's still the most adorable. Samus has her parents murdered and her entire home razed to the ground by Ridley and the Space Pirates, and after that she's brought up by the bird-like Chozo. We see her in training as a teenager, then join the military, actually stick it to Malkovich 1 or 2 times, and then she re-encounters the Space Pirates. Over time she gradually loses her optimism and sense of innocence, and even though she's still a good person by the conclusion, it really feels like she's been through a lot and changed accordingly. The manga does hit some of the same notes as Other M, like how she completely breaks down when she faces Ridley. But in the manga, this makes a lot more sense. This is the first time she's ever seen him since she was just a child. It's the first time she's had to face that trauma. And even so, she ends up overcoming her fear and defeating him for the first time. Other M tries to do the same thing at a point after she's literally killed him a half-dozen times. It just doesn't feel right. The manga also does a really good job of emphasizing the importance of Samus' relationship with the Chozo, and with one in particular who was like a second father to her. It tries to end on a positive note, but overall it's very tragic, which really gets you feeling for Samus. I've only ever played one Metroid game all the way through, and I enjoyed the hell out of this manga, so I encourage every fan of the series to read it. And if you don't like it, well, it's not canon, so you can ignore it if you want to. That's the nice thing about supplemental materials, you can just treat them like they don't exist, unlike, well, you know. What the fuck is this? There have been some weird fucking things to come out of the Mario franchise, but what the hell? Super Mario Kun takes everyone's favorite happy-go-lucky red cat coin-hoarding plumber who saves princesses from fire-breathing turtles and turns him into a short-tempered chibi who likes making crass jokes. Now, in case you aren't familiar with the idea, this is what you call a gag manga, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Everything is hyperactive, every page is filled to the brim with as many jokes as possible, every living thing can talk so that they can make as many jokes as possible, and holy shit, is that supposed to be Bowser? My god, I mean, the Mario games have always been weird, but this is just... ugh. This is like the Japanese answer to the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, that's the best way I can put it. And what you see here, what I'm showing you, that's about all there is to this manga, just wall-to-wall slapstick Japanese language puns and weird expressions. Now, granted, I can't think of a single video game franchise that would be better suited for this kind of manga, but it's just so weird. Okay, after seeing that one, I've got enough of me for maybe one more, so let's just do one more and call it at that. The Pokemon franchise has put out tons of merchandise of every kind you can think of ever since it was created over 15 years ago. There's the card game, plushies, toys, clothes, school supplies, there was a Tamagotchi ripoff years ago, and I'm sure everyone knows about the long-running anime. And if you don't, greetings travelers from another world and welcome to Earth. My name is Nick, please don't probe me. So with all this other stuff, I'm sure it won't be that big a surprise for you to hear that there have been a lot of Pokemon manga written over the years, and I mean a lot. Electric Tale of Pikachu, Magical Pokemon Journey, and I think the Nuzlocke webcomics deserve a mention too, because there are some really funny ones out there. But by far the most successful and longest running Pokemon manga is Pokemon Adventures, written by Kusaka Hidenori. I love this manga. It's been running for over 14 years now, and it's awe-inspiring how Kusaka manages to keep so many elements from the games while still putting his own spin on them and making them feel original. The action is incredibly intense, at times even surprisingly violent. Oh, you doubt me? You think there's no way cutesy Pokemon can ever get involved in anything bloodier than a pillow fight? Well, check out this Arbok getting its head sliced off! What do you think of that, huh? But the real highlight of the series is the cast. The Pokemon games have always had simple characters with simple motivations. The gimmicky villains, supporting characters, and especially the gym leaders are really allowed to shine throughout the series, and all of them get a chance to show off how freaking awesome they are. But even by comparison, the heroes of the series are especially cool. Pokemon Adventures sort of takes like a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure approach with its protagonists, as each new story arc, based on the most recent game of the time, features a new group of heroes, with their designs based on those of the player characters and rivals of the games they're adapted from. Though actually, one of the protagonists of the first arc is a girl, preceding the inclusion of a female player avatar in the games by about 4 years. Each character is unique, and as a result each story arc is unique, and unlike the anime, whose hero has been questing for over a decade, and yet is still just 10 years old, the manga's heroes are allowed to actually age and change over time. Actual character development takes place. If you like Pokemon, if you ever liked Pokemon, read this series. If you've never liked Pokemon, read it anyway, it just might convert you. And with this one you're in luck, because Viz Media has actually released a good number of the volumes in English. They shouldn't be too hard to find. I think I'll revisit this series in a later video since I enjoy it so much, and I haven't had nearly enough time to talk about it yet. But for now, that'll do it. I'm Ruler of Time, and until next time, put down the controller for a little while so you can do some reading from right to left. Anyway, if you could cross over any manga you have read with another non-manga story, which would it be and why?
Luffy meets Batman would be pretty awesome.
We have to track down the criminal so I can punch him in the face!
You're really loud, kind of breaking my cover. Luffy versus the Joker would just be worth it, too.
You're not nearly as funny as Buggy.
That'd be great. You switch the clown villains with each other. Batman's like, you're not really that, psychological anymore. No, but I split apart! It's wacky!